Okay. Today we're going to be going over my necro healer build. As you can see, I'm running the Argonian for race. Now, the reason for that is Argonians pretty much make the best healers. It's pretty much just between them and Bretons as far as the best healer race. So we're going to start out with the basics first and then work our way up through endgame information. So first things first, when you go into your character, you're going to put all of your attribute points into magic. As a healer, pretty much all your stats are going to be based off of magic. Now when you're first leveling up a healer, and you're getting gear crafted for you, we're looking at what kind of abilities and things to run. Honestly, you really only need, for beginner healers, when you're trying to level up, there's really two routes that you can go. Well, three now with the newer update. So I'll go over all three just real quick. The first thing you can do is you can pretty much just spec yourself out as a damage character and not even really run heals and just be a damage until you hit level 50. The other route is to make a healer, but basically do a more hybrid style. So you can still do solo content without it taking an hour to kill a couple small enemies like, you know, goblins or something. Because as you probably figured out, healers, they heal, they don't really deal damage so much. So route 2 is basically just put 1 or 2 good heals on your bar and do everything else that's damage. Now, there's a new way, since the game recently introduced the armory. You can actually come into the armory and you have 2 slots that it gives you. You could put a healer build on one and a damage build on the other, so that you can go out and have damage for questing and grinding and stuff, and then when you're doing dungeons and things, you could swap over to that damage or that healer build. Now, if you join a guild, most guilds will have an armory place in their guild hall, so you wouldn't have to buy anything. I think you might get it just for, I think it might just come with the game now, I don't know for sure. Not the assistant, but the armory station itself. But you'll need a house to use it, unless you buy the assistant from the crown store. Anyway, but let's get right into it then. So, first thing first is the ability setup. Well, what abilities are you going to need? Well, first of all, being a healer, you're going to need a restoration staff. So, in the restoration skill line, these are the abilities you're going to want on your front bar. This very first ability here, Morph to Illustrious Healing. The other morph used to be meta, but it's not anymore, because it gives you magicka when you heal people. This one basically just makes it last longer. It heals a little bit better. So it's generally just better now, because it's pretty easy to sustain your resources on healers. So this is going to be your main healing ability. Now, this combat prayer here used to be a meta ability. It's not so much anymore, because generally you're going to have somebody in the group running Kinra. Kinra applies minor berserk to your group, which, as you see from the combat prayer, is exactly what this does, minor berserk. But Kinra has better uptime. Combat prayer also only hits 6 people. And it's like a conal in front of you, whereas Kinra is a very large area of effect around you. So Kinra much better. So healers don't really need to run combat prayer anymore, unless you're a Templar and just don't have good healing. So then the other one is Siphon Spirit. I went over this already in my other healer build for the Warden. This is a must-have for healers. A lot of healers like to run the Ellie Drain from the Destruction Staff, which is this right here. The morph of it, Elemental Drain, also applies minor mag steal, but as you notice from the Siphon Spirit here, this applies minor mag steal and minor life steal, so they heal themselves and get more magicka back instead of just healing themselves. Much better. Much better. So that's basically 2 miners with the power of 1, and that's really nice to have, in my opinion, way better than LE Drain, because it's actually providing 2 buffs that generally, in pugs anyway, aren't already being applied. Now in endgame, you'll have the other support running Blood Altar, which also applies minor lifesteal. I actually have that on my build just for the synergy it provides. But, I mean, either way you can go. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. I just like to have my Destruction Staff bar freed up, because Siphon Spirit is a Restoration Staff skill, not a Destruction Staff, so you get to have that on your front bar with your Healing Staff instead of on your back bar. I like to have more dots and type stuff, AoEs, that kind of thing for my back bar. So I just, I don't know, I just like it better. It also, I do believe, lasts, like, longer. I'm not entirely sure about what the morph is, but this one's only 20 seconds, whereas the Siphon Spirit is 30. I don't think the morph changes in duration for Elemental Drain. I'm pretty sure it's still only 20 seconds. Either way, whichever one you go with, make sure you have one of them. I just prefer Siphon Spirit. And then, of course, you're going to want all the passives in your Restoration line. Don't really bother with anything else. Pretty much just this Illustrious and this Siphon Spirit. Nothing else in here is particularly useful, at least in endgame content. So, what else are you going to want on your front bar? So you got your Siphon Spirit there, you got your Illustrious Healing. We have 3 other abilities and an ultimate, so you're going to want that Energy Orb. So Energy Orb comes from your Undaunted skill line right here, same with that Overflowing Altar. That's the Blood Altar I was talking about before. Energy Orb first, though. So this baby, basically, it's just this big orb that floats around through the group, and anyone in the area will get healed. See those little tendrils? That goes out and hits any player, any ally in the area, heals them. That even works on NPCs and things in dungeons. Even though they're not super useful, it still heals them. So you got your Illustrious, and you got your Orb Energy floating through the room. Those are both AoE heals, damage over heal over times as well. That's really helpful. Those are 2 of the primary heals in this game, is the Energy Orb, the Healing Orb, and the Illustrious Healing. Those are must-haves on any healer. If you don't have those, you're pretty much not a healer. Same with that Siphon Spirit. If you're not applying Minor Magic to Steal and got those 2 heals, you're doing it wrong. So then the next one here is Renewing Undeath. So that is actually a class ability from the Necro. It's in here in the Living Death skill, 3rd ability down, Life Amid Death. You morph that, and this becomes super, super helpful. So whenever you have a corpse on the ground, it has an extra bonus too. This is going to be your main spammable. This is your main spammable heal on your healer for a Necro anyway. So what this does is, see that corpse? Oops, waited too long. I'll do that in a minute. But what this does is, when there's corpses down on the ground, you'll be able to do an extra effect, and that'll put this seal down. So, just casting it once, boom, that just releases a burst heal. That's basically just any other burst heal in the game. It's just a real quick, generally it has pretty high chance of crit healing also. That's basically just a big burst heal. It's a good thing to have. Pretty much, you always want a burst heal and a couple heal over times on your bar as a healer. So this is going to be your spammable. Now when you put that seal down and it consumes that corpse, it also purges you and acts as another heal over time for 5 seconds. So basically you got this one that's about a 10-second. Well, you also, when there's corpses on the ground, which there always will be, this is lasts for 5 seconds. It's about the same size, but it also cleanses you. Now that's a thing that other classes don't have. This is the only class that has a group purge. Templars do have a purge, but it's not a group purge, and you're required to synergize, and it only works for like 1 to 3 people, I think, before it has to be recast. The Necro ability here works on anyone inside its radius. There's no cap on the people it can purge. Now, the reason I'm using the word purge is because if you come down here into the support line for PvP, there's an ability called Purge. Now, if you notice the description of that, it does the exact same thing. Cleanse yourself and your group, removing up to 3 negative effects. It's the same thing that necro ability is doing. If you come up here, remove 3 negative effects. Now, the difference is, the support one costs a shitload of magicka. It also only hits 6 people, and it's based off of you. So you have to be right next to them pretty much for it to work. Whereas if you use the necro ability here, it doesn't have any cap on people. It's just whoever is within the radius. And the great thing about that is, like I can show you right now, you can cast from a distance. So if I bring out my blast bones and have them launch over there, boom, now I can heal across the room. I just purged everybody over there. I don't even have to be near them. It's very, very handy. It's one, in my opinion, is probably the most useful healer ability in the game, just because of its utility purposes. It makes healing Vetmaw Lorcage super easy. So then the next ability, so far we got our Illustrious Healing or Energy Orb, our Spammable Heal, Renewing Undeath, we got our Siphon Spirit. Well, the last one is Overflowing Altar. I mentioned that earlier, the Blood Altar, this bad boy. So that's also in your Undaunted skill line. And as you look for this tooltip here, as you see, when you put it down, it's going to cost you some health, but it's minimal, it's not going to hurt you at all. Now what it does is you put this Blood Altar down, and it applies minor lifesteal to all enemies in the area. It's not limited to one, like this Siphon Spirit is. It hits everybody. Now you might be asking, well, why are you running Siphon Spirit and Overflowing Altar both? Well, the Overflowing Altar I'm mostly just using as a synergy, because if you scroll down, allies in the area can activate the Blood Feast synergy, healing them for 65% of their max health. That's a big, oh shit heal. You get down on health, you took some big damage, you can hit, boom, hit that, you're pretty much back up to full health. It's a really, really nice synergy to have. Plus, it also applies the minor lifesteal, so for mobs and things, it's better to use that Overflowing Altar for your lifesteal source rather than this, because you'd have to hit every single enemy instead of just the one you're focusing on at the time. So Siphon Spirit is better for bosses, Overflowing Altar is better for the mobs as far as the majors and minors go, but honestly it's better to use both. And like I said, you can use Elemental Drain. Elemental Drain basically does the same thing, but it provides another buff other than lifesteal, which basically is the same buff that the tank already provides with his puncture ability. So when you choose between those, basically the reason I picked it is just because of the timer. Like I was saying earlier, it's just a lot easier in my opinion. But yeah, the Elemental Drain only lasts for 23 seconds. I just looked it up to verify. So this one is about 10 seconds longer, which is really nice, and it goes a lot better with the other 10-second timers you've got. Because Illustrious is pretty much 10 seconds, this is a 12. Energy Orb's a 10 second, this is a 5 second. It just pairs really well with everything else. It just seems to me to be a lot more user-friendly. Especially if you're not running Altar, because there are other things you can run, other setups. This is just mine. Then the ultimate, you're going to want to run the Pestilent Colossus. Now that is from the Gravelord, the morph of the Frozen Colossus. Now what this does is it provides your major vulnerability. The damage is minimal, it doesn't really matter a whole lot as far as the smashes. Mostly it's for that major vulnerability down there at the bottom. There are very few ways to get major vulnerability in the game. This is one of the best. That's why Necros are so important in the endgame communities, because they're the only class that applies this so well. Now, they also apply minor vulnerability, as do Wardens, but Wardens do not apply major. So, you're going to want that Colossus. The only time you wouldn't use that Colossus is if you already have many other Necros in the group. And I'll go over that a little bit later, because that's going to edit your build and gear. So when we get into the gear portion, I'll go over what happens if you have too many necros in the group, because those buffs don't stack. So anyway, that's finishes up the front bar. You got your illustrious, your heal over time, your energy orb, another good heal over time, your spammable burst heal, which doubles as a heal over time in a group purge. You got your blood altar, you got your siphon, you got your colossus. Now we're gonna go to the back bar. So the back bar, you're gonna want to run a destruction staff, and infused for the trait as well. I'll get into the reasons for that later when we get into gear and stuff. But destruction staff on the back bar, and you're going to be running on the necro. You're going to want to run the blast bones. Now the reason for that is you noticed before when I was demonstrating that blast bones you can use as a range heal, because wherever you send that blast bones, he'll drop a body down. If you notice, as soon as he blows up, he drops that little corpse, little arrow thing there, little beam, and you boom, now you got heals. And you can do that from pretty far away. Like I can do it from all the way over here, and then he jumps over there, and now I'm healing from over here. Now most times in endgame, you're on a necro, you're going to be the kite healer. You're not going to be the group healer. You're going to be a bit farther away. This is why. You're really good at healing from distances on a necro. And that's basically the reason that you want that blast bones. Because with that blast bones, you can target where your corpses go. And that's super helpful when you're trying to heal from a distance. I mean, really, it's just helpful in general. Plus, it deals a little bit extra damage. And any extra damage to help out the damage dealers is welcome. The faster a fight goes, the less damage everyone will take in general. So that's why I want to use that. Plus, it does give you some buffs from the passives. I'm gonna come down, look at here. Just having that on your bar. So when you have that blast bone die, the next one costs less. Plus, it increases your critical strike chance. Just by having a Grave Lord ability slotted. So if you notice, I have one on both bars. I've got this one on the front bar, and I've got this one on the second bar. I have that on both bars because you want that crit strike chance. Not because it's really going to help you with your healing, but because, like I said earlier, any extra damage is really welcome. If you can just deal passive damage without actually dealing it, intentionally, that's really helpful. So that's a 4% there you got. That's pretty nice. Then you got Dismember. While it's active, your physical and spell penetration are increased. Again, that's just the a little bit extra damage. Help out the damage dealers. Increases your damage done with damage over time effects. Again, this doesn't have to have a thing slotted. It's just a useful thing to have. Just passive damage. But anyway, moving on. So you got your Stalking Blast Bones. Next up, you got your Blockade of Storms. Now this is another must-have for supports, particularly healers. You're going to want to run the Lightning, because damage, being as direct damage and single target is the meta still currently, all the damage dealers mag-wise are going to be running flame staffs. So your damage dealers will be giving uptime on the flame, unless you're on a Templar or a sorcerer. You'd be using a flame staff on them. A warden uses an ice. But on the necro, you're going to want to run a lightning. The reason that you run the wall, there's kind of two reasons for that. On the necro, it's not quite as important that it be a lightning. You could run a fire if you wanted to, or an ice. I just run the lightning because I find it more useful myself. But anyhow, there's two reasons to run it. One is having that wall down, having that elemental wall, blockade, storms down, is anything in it taking damage off your destruction staff. Now it's not because of the damage done, although, like I said before, any passive damage helps. The reason for that is, if you notice right here, you got a weapon damage enchantment, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 450 for 5 seconds. And because the staff is infused, it increases the weapon enchantment effect and reduces the cooldown. So, now tanks are running a wall of elements with a Crusher enchantment, but can't really stack the Crusher enchantment with another Crusher enchantment. That's not really how it works. So what healers do is we run this weapon damage enchantment on our back bar just like damage dealer mag damage do. Because that extra weapon and spell damage is going to increase our healing. Now because we have an infused staff, now that wall of elements, that's a staff ability. So every time that ticks, you have a chance for that enchantment to go off. So because this blockade is storms, now that's better than the other morph. The other morph is the one with damage run, and that's unstable wall of elements. This is blockade of elements. The difference is blockade has a longer timer by about 3 seconds or so, 3 or 4 seconds, and it has a much larger area of effect. So you have a chance for that AoE to debuff or buff that many more enemies, because that wall of lightning not only does it proc your enchantment from your weapon, but it also applies concuss, which applies minor vulnerability. Now it doesn't have a very good uptime, but it's better than nothing. Any little bit helps. So then that's minor vulnerability, not major vulnerability. So that's why you want the blockade. So those two reasons, plus additionally, just like I said, any passive damage is just helpful. Next thing up, your intensive mender. Now, that is exactly what it sounds like. It's a little ghost that you can pull up, and it just passively heals around you. Having that on your bar also, there's buffs and things that you can get in the passives. Always get the passives in the class abilities, class skills. Yeah, that mender, you just a little ghost guy you pull up, and he just single target heals anyone around. So like if I drop my blood altar here, notice, oh, now he's healing me. And he's a real good little healer. He also drops a corpse, so you can, boom, you can cast this on his corpse as well. Now that little healer, he stays with you. He stays real close, unlike the blast bones. So that mender is super nice. Next thing, agony totem. So, if you saw that that mender is down here in the living death, well, the agony totem is up here in bone tyrant. It's the second to last ability here. It's bone totem morph to agony totem. Now, agony totem applies minor protection when you're casting it. So it gives it to you and your allies, reducing damage taken. And then it begins feasting on fearing nearby enemies, causing them to cower. So after 2 seconds, and then every 2 seconds after that, for the remainder, it causes them to fear. Then allies in the area can activate the synergy for it. So that causes any enemies in the area to take magic damage over 5 seconds and applies minor vulnerability to them. And that, as you can see, increases damage taken by 5%. That's super helpful. Now, if you're not in a group with a warden, you have to have this ability, because that's, other than the wall of lightning, that's the only way to apply it. Now, wardens can apply that at distance. This agony totem only works up close. Wherever you go, I mean, you can aim it away, it's still going to be right in front of you. So you have to be up close for that to work, which is the only reason that wardens are better for the minor vulnerability buff. The necros are a little more second tier. But they still are better than every other healer in the game, as far as that is concerned, because every other healer is stuck using that wall of storms for their minor vulnerability, or they're using a couple different sets, but those sets aren't really good in the long run. The abilities are better. That's why the wardens and the necros are so good at healing, because of all the buff synergies and healing they put out. Because necros actually have the highest healing per second in the game currently. The only one that even comes close is the wardens, who are a real close second behind the necros. The only reason wardens are generally considered a better healer is because of that minor vulnerability. You can do that at a range. Honestly, I don't think wardens are better. I think they're both pretty much tied for the first place spot. I have both. I have a warden and a necro. I play both. I can tell you from experience, they both have, so the Wardens are a little bit better because of the minor vulnerability. You know, they can cast minor vulnerability whenever they want on anything they want and get better uptime. But the flip side is Necros are way better at healing at distances, and they have that group purge. So like, there's really a kind of major advantage to both of them that the other one doesn't have. So either way you go, you're pretty well set. And the last ability is going to be Necrotic Potency. Now the reason I run this is basically just for uptime. This bad boy here, whenever there's corpses on the ground, so here real quick I'll pull out just a couple corpses so you can see what this actually does. So once these little beams come up, there's one. Now you'll see I hit this ability, boom. I just consumed those corpses. But it also increased my ultimate. So if you look at my ultimate number down there on the bottom right of the screen, boom, it just went up. Every corpse you consume increases the ultimate. So check this out. So when you're using this, every corpse that you sap gives you 6 ultimate. And then it also heals you every second for 2 seconds per every corpse you consumed. Now while slotted, your damage taken is also reduced by 3%. Now admittedly you're not on your back bar for very long. But while you're there, any increased damage or decreased damage taken is just generally helpful. That's a nice passive. But mostly it's just for that ulti gain. Because 6 ulti for a corpse, I mean that's real good. When you get into mobs and things, you can get a whole ultimate, drop it, and then get another ultimate right away again. Now the reason that's important is because of this Pestilent Colossus ultimate. I'll get a little bit into more, get more into that with the abilities and, not abilities, the gear setup a little bit down this video. But back bar, I like to use, there's 2 options really you can do for the back bar. You can either go with the Revive ulti, which can resurrect up to 3 dead people within its area of effect. Or you can go with the Barrier, which is this bad boy here. Now, Aggressive Warhorn is good for your back bar as well, only if there are lots of Necros in the group, or if you are not running Sax Heal. But I'll get a little bit more into that later when I get into the gear and stuff too, because that comes into it. But yeah, so I like to do that res ulti on the back bar with the ulti gain there, your Agony Totem, your healer, your blockade elements, and your blast bones for the back bar. And it pairs really well with the heals on your front bar. And that's the ability setup for the Necro Healer. Now we are going to go into the champion points. So the champion points really only matter in the blue tree. And it's going to be pretty basic, same as pretty much every other healer in the game. You're going to want the Fighting Finesse for the increased critical damage and critical healing. So that's 8% more critical healing. That's just really nice to have. Soothing Tide there increases your healing done by area of effect heals by 2% per stage, giving you a 10% bonus when you max it out. Now basically that's helping with your orb, that's helping with your spammable, that's helping with your illustrious, that's helping with your blood altar. Pretty much every heal on your bar, that buff is buffing. That's really good to have. Next one down is Focused Mending. This bad boy increases your healing done with single target heals by 2% per stage for a 10% total. Now that is buffing that little mender you have. That's also buffing the synergy from the blood altar. That's also buffing ability you have in the restoration, a passive every time you heavy attack, which you need to do. Every time you heavy attack with your healer, it's going to heal someone nearby. So that's buffing that as well, and it's buffing your Siphon Spirit ability with that minor life steal, because that's a single target also. It's buffing that. That's a lot of buffs right there. Combine that with the last one, it's muy healing. Muy healing. So this last thing you're going to slot here is Swift Renewal. Increases your healing done with healing over time effects by 2% per stage. That, again, is every single ability you have. Every healing ability you have is a healing over time. Except for a couple of the synergies, but they also, the ability itself also is a heal over time too. Blood Altar, heal over time. Illustrious Healing, heal over time. Energy Orb, heal over time. All of them heal over time. When you use a corpse with your spammable, heal over time. Otherwise, it's not a heal over time. But it's just, all those four are really good to have. So now we're going to go into just a basic CP setup. You're going to be pretty much the same as damage as far as CP setups and things. It's just the actual slottables that you're going to have different. But you're going to need that crit chance right there. It's a passive one. Same with this max stamina. Helps with blocking, dodge rolling, things. You're going to need to do that on heals. Max magicka, another passive. You just get it. You don't have to slot it. You're going to want all of those. Same with the deal in here. Blessed. Increased healing done by 1% per stage. Don't have to slot it. It's great. These others, you have to slot them to use them. Don't waste your points. Okay? Now you're going to kind of come into staving death here. Same deal. This bad boy, quick recovery, super helpful. Super helpful here. Super helpful here. Super helpful here. Don't have to slot any of those. These two you do have to slot. Ignore them. Next up is over here. Extended Might. Going to come in here. Same deal. Get all of this one. All of this one. All of this one. Because you don't have to slot any of these. These right here, these right here are all just passives. So you don't even have to have them slotted to use them. Very, very helpful. Have to have that one slotted, don't even worry about it. Same with that one there, don't worry about those. Other than that, you're pretty much just going to put all your stuff over here into this healing branch. Those four that I mentioned, and then if you feel your build would be more useful with one of the other ones, you can always swap stuff around as you see fit later. This is really just a template to help you get to where you need to be. Feel free to tweak it as you see fit to help your play style and needs. But that basically goes over all the CP that's relevant for healing. Everything else is more just general world type stuff. It doesn't really affect your role. That's the CP. The ability setup. Next thing we're going to go over is the gear and mundus stone, boons, buffs, all that stuff. So, first of all, as you if you watch my warden video, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I said in there. You're going to want to go with the thief. Increases your weapon and spell critical strike ratings. The reason that's important is because as a healer, you're based off of magicka, just like damage dealers. You can crit heal your allies, just like damage dealers can crit damage. You can crit heal. So it is actually possible to get more healing if you're expecting to crit healing, because when you crit heal, it'll heal for way more. So if your crit percentage is higher, you see I only have a 27% there. That's pretty low. But the reason that it's that low is because there's other things that are more important. Crit is nice, but it's not the end-all be-all for healing like it is for damage, or at least used to be. The thing you're going to want to spec into mostly for healing is your maximum magicka. That max magicka right there is super, super important. Okay? Max magicka and spell damage. Those are the two main things that you need as a healer. Crit is the next most important. After that, it's going to be your magicka recovery. After that, it's going to be your physical and spell resistances. But that's basically the attributes that you need to look into for specific stats and things. Now we're going to go and focus on the gear. So, as a necro healer, there's pretty much two sets that you need. And I do say need because they are the best sets in the game for a necro healer. And that's the Sax Heal from Rockgrove and the Yorvolds, the Scale Collar. Now, the reason they're good is if we come in here and we scroll down and look at the bonuses, you got Max Magicka, as I already said, very good to have. Then you got minor Aegis with helping your damage taken. So basically resistances, also good. Now I am missing one piece on the perfected. I don't have the necklace in perfected yet, only the rings. So that's why you see that one little spot that's kind of, the 5 item right there is kind of darkened out. It's because I don't have the full 5 piece of perfected, only the regular, the non-perfected. Because you can mix and match pieces. It'll still give you the base set if you're missing one of the perfecteds. But if you have all 5 pieces of the perfected, you get an extra 1k stamina, in addition to the maximum stamina from the 4 piece. So you get mag and stam, and then more stamina. Then, down on the 5 piece, this is the reason that Saxiel is so important. Now, Saxiel is actually a heavy set. If you'll notice, I'm running it on my weapons and jewelry. That's why. If you run it on your body, it's going to be heavy armor, and you need to wear light armor on a healer. So, for this 5 piece right here, when you use an ultimate ability while in combat, you and up to 11 group members within 28 meters gain major force for 1 second per 15 ultimates spent, increasing your crit damage done by 20%. That's a big buff. And that is, if you notice that major force, well, based off your ultimate, you're also getting major vulnerability from the ultimate Colossus. So you're getting major force and major vulnerability. Now, this right here lasts for 12 seconds. Major vulnerability lasts for 12 seconds, alright? But that is increased by the other set. So you have Sax giving you more buffs. Now, that's what I was talking about before with the Warhorn. Now, if you come and look at the Warhorn, aggressive Warhorn also gives you major force, increasing your critical damage by 20%, but it only gives it to you for 10 seconds. So major force for 10 seconds, or you come in here and get Saxiel, and that gives it to you for 1 second per 15 ultimates spent. Well, when you cast an ultimate, this one right here costs 232. That's way over 15. That gives you a pretty hefty buff timer. So that is Sax on a healer is way better than trying to run a Warhorn, because it gives you more buffs for one, and it gives you those buffs for a longer time than Warhorn does. So if you don't have access to Rockrobe or the DLC with it, and you can't get the set, then you need to be running Warhorn on your back bar instead of the Res ulti. And still run the Colossus on your front bar, unless you're in a group that has a shitload of other Necros. And this is where we're going to get into that now. So, if you're in a group, and there's other Necros, Necro damage, Necro healer, Necro tank, if you're not the only one. So, for uptime, you're going to want roughly 3 or 4 Necros in a group, just for 100% uptime on a Colossus. You need about 3 Colossus, sometimes 4 in a group for 100% uptime. So that changes if they're all supports, because healers can run your bolts and make it last for longer, so you would need fewer Colossus casts. So if there's two Necro healers, you're both still going to run Colossus on your front bar, but one of you is going to run Saxiel Yorvul's, the other is going to run Spell Power here in Yorvul's. Necros are one of the least variants for gear. The reason for that is because they're so strong with the Sax and Yorvul's combination that it's really not worth running anything else. If you can get those 2 sets, you're going to want them, because they are so good in combined, because you got the 5 piece from here giving you that major force, and then you have the Yorvul's. Now look at this stuff. It gives you recovery, healing done, and while in combat increases the duration of all major and minor buffs, and damage shields you apply by 40%. That's crazy. Increases the timers of all the majors and minors. Well, hold on. It increases the timers for majors and minors, but you're giving a major here, major force, and you're giving another major right here, major vulnerability. Are you telling me that those are increased? Yes, that is what I am telling you. Instead of being limited to around 12 to 15 seconds on the one, and limited to around 30 seconds on the other. When I cast this, look at the timer, boom. Now he's stomping. That guy, he's got a 12-second on that still, okay? That didn't change, but if you look at my buffs here, oh no, it doesn't work on dummies, I guess. That's unfortunate. Oh well, I can't really display that on him, I guess. But because of the Yorvolds, when you're in actual content, I guess it doesn't work in houses, but when you're in actual content, when you cast that Yorvold buff is buffing your abilities, so you're gonna get this sack seal because you're casting your ultimate with a 500 ult. It's giving you, with Yorvolds, instead of 35 seconds, it's giving you 45 seconds on the sack seal 5-piece buff. So you're getting that major force for 45 seconds instead of 30 to 35. And if you didn't have the Yorvolds, it'd be 30-35 seconds. With the Yorvolds, it increases it to 40-45 seconds. That's 10 seconds more, 10-15 seconds longer. That's really helpful in endgame content. It also increases the buff from your Colossus. So instead of being limited to only 12 seconds for that major vulnerability, it increases that by 40% also, pushing it up to around 15-16 seconds. Which, again, really nice. Really nice. So that's the reason you want to have those particular sets. So Saxiel and Yorvolds. Now again, Yorvolds drops in Scale Collar Peak, Saxiel drops in Rock Grove, the Trial in Blackwood. Now, for the monster, of course, you're going to be running Symphony of Blades. That is the meta for healing, no matter what class you're on. Reason for that is it's a resource management for your group. It helps your group members keep their resources up so they can continue dealing damage and blocking and all that good stuff. Very important for them, very important for you. As a support character, it is your job to support your teammates, not just do stuff that helps you. So, Saxiel, while it's not really giving you a whole lot of buffs for your healing and stuff, it is helping your damage dealers and your tanks keep dealing damage and keep from dying, just in general, which is super, super important. Now, Symphony comes from a little dungeon called Depths of Malatar, I think? Let me make sure here real quick. We'll go into DLC Dungeons. Symphony of Blades, Depths of Malatar. And on a healer, of course, you're going to want all light armor. Light divines for everything, except the big pieces you'll want infused. As you see, I got my legs, my chest, both infused. Now the reason that you want those infused is those are bigger pieces. So if you put an enchantment on there infused, you see I get 1k max magicka instead of like 300. There's an 800, 300s. The head is also a large piece, but honestly, I don't care as much about the head, but you get 8k off of a Divine's large piece. You get 1k mag off of an infused. So Divine's helps with your mundus and all, that's nice. Having 2 of those infused pieces with a little extra mag doesn't hurt anything, and because more mag equals more spell damage, it's actually buffing your heals more. And since you're running the Thief Mundus, that's a crit damage. So as I said before, max magicka and spell damage are more important than crit. Not by a lot, but they still are more important. So that's why you want to run it that way. Jewelry, you can go Triune or Arcane. Infused works just as well. As you see here, I have a little bit of a combination. I got 2 Arcanes and a Triune. Sometimes I go and infuse into Arcanes. I generally stick to Arcane, Triune, or Infused. Arcane's my main go-to, and it's a little bit cheaper to get made or crafted. Plus the mats are cheaper. But that's generally the setup you're going to run. Of course, spell damage increases on the jewelry, max magic on all the gear. You're going to go, you can either go a Crusher Enchantment on your front bar like the tanks do on their back bar, because you don't really attack with your back bar much, and you want this one with your weapon damage to help with your healing and stuff. So I either go Crusher on your front. You have two other options. You can either go a Weakening, which reduces their damage done, so the monster will deal less damage when the enchantment procs on it, or you can go with the deals magic damage and restores magicka enchant, the mag recovery enchantment for the weapon. Those are basically the three options. But as you see, I like the Crusher myself. Just helps a little bit better uptime with the tanks. So I go Crusher on the front bar with a Decisive. Now Decisive is important. That's helping you with your ulti regeneration. A lot of people like to use the Blessed for their trait because it increases your healing done, but in endgame you don't really need as much healing. I mean, once you get to endgame, people pretty much know not to stand in stupid shit, so they don't take as much damage. That Decisive is going to help with your ultimate regain, so you can cast ultis more often, providing buffs better, making the fights a lot quicker and cleaner. So Decisive is really helpful with that. And then if used on the back bar for the enchantment, that pretty much goes over the ability setup. So this is going to be an end game, of course, setup. Now, if you're just starting out healing, the main things you need are the Illustrious Heals, the Orb here, and this Blood Altar. Those are the main things to focus on. The Altar, the Orb, the Illustrious Healing, and then back bar, that Wall of Elements, and the Mender. Okay, those are the big ones for starting out that you should focus on. Okay, again, that's Altar, Energy Orb, Illustrious Healing, Blockade of Storms, and the Intensive Mender. Now, when you're just starting out as a healer, you're going to be mostly focusing on actually just healing. It's not going to be as much about the buffs and keeping your team members' resources up and things like that. It's mostly just going to be focusing on keeping them alive. Because in more beginner-type content, people do a lot, well, less intelligent things. They stand in AoEs, they don't know what's going on as well. So it's going to be a harder time trying to keep them alive. When you're first starting out, it's actually a little bit harder on the healer as far as the healing goes, because you have to heal a lot more because people take way more damage. They're way squishier, they don't deal as much damage, so fights are longer, they just take a lot more damage. So you're going to have to be more focused on blunt healing ability, not as much on all the passives and buffs and things like that. But once you get into the mid-game where you start doing, like, you know, vet dungeons, trials on normal or vet, once you get into that mid-tier of endgame community, you're going to want to start focusing more on buffs and things, and less on your just straight healing ability. Then when you get into super endgame, it's mostly all on buffs. It's less on heals, and again, that's why Wardens and Necros are so good, because they apply those buffs and things while healing ridiculous amounts. But if you can't get those sets right away, good alternatives to those sets. So when you're first starting out on a healer, the sets you're going to want to get are Julianos and Kvetch Gladiator. Now, I might not say, why do I want something named Gladiator on a healer? That doesn't make sense. Well, the reason for that is if you come and look at the Kvetch Gladiator set, which I got right here, you'll see it crit chance. Oops, if I put it up to here, you'll see the actual stats, sorry. Crit chance, weapon and spell damage, and then more weapon and spell damage against targets who are at or below. Now, the 5-piece isn't quite as helpful, but all that crit is really good. A lot of people tell you to run Magnus, or there's one other one, I can't think of the name of it right off the top of my head, but there are a few other mag sets that are decent starting mag sets. I don't like them for healers or damage just because this crit is way more useful. So I like to do Gladiators for my starter crafted set before you start getting in farming actual, you know, good gear and whatnot. And the other one over here is Julianos, Law Julianos. That's going to give you another big crit buff, and it gives you weapon and spell damage as well. It's a really good starter mag set. is pretty well balanced with max mag and crit and weapon damage and all, or spell damage and all that. So that's what I like to start out with, is just those two. So if you're beginning, those are good places to go. Hire a crafter, get one of your guild people to make those for you. Once you get into mid-tier crafting, mid-tier healing, you're going to want to go to DLC dungeons. Go into White Gold Tower and get Spell Power Cure right here. This bad boy is really, really good. It is the next best healer set after Sax Heal and Yorvul's for a Necro. For other classes, it is the meta healing set. For like DKs, Nightblades, Sorcerers, Templars, Spell Power Cure is a must-have. Look at the 5-piece here. When you overheal yourself or an ally, so basically when someone's at full health and you heal them. So you don't actually heal them, they're already at full health. But when you overheal yourself or an ally, you give that target Major Courage, which increases their weapon and spell damage. Now that's really, really nice. Okay, Major Courage is your friend. So SPC, super, super helpful. There's another set that does that called Olarime from Cloud Rest, but it doesn't hit as many people per tick, and the radius is smaller. SPC is just a better set. Plus its set buffs are better too. So SPC or Spell Power Cure, same thing. That's a must-have. If you notice, I even have it as one of my secondaries. If I come into my chest, Hollow Fang has actually been replaced with Stone Talker. So Stone Talker instead of Hollow Fang. I think I might have one of the Stone Talker stabs. Maybe not. Oh, there it is, yeah. So Stone Talker here. It's another Rock Grove, like Sax. And this is just a regen set. But that's more end game. It's not something you need to worry about right away. But Spell Power Cure right here. That's what I was telling you about. Really, really nice. Another really good starter set to get is Worm Cult. Worm Cult helps with recovery, kind of like the Hollow Finger Stone Talkers. So SPC is a damage buff set, whereas Worm Cults, Hollow Fang, Stone Talkers, those are all recovery sets. Yorvul's is a buff set, SPC is a buff set, Twilight is a heal set. That comes from Mauve Lorcage. You can get that in normal Mauve Lorcage. That's another really good starter set for healers, particularly on Templars and Sorcerers. But these are all... Torix is a crafted set. It's not as good anymore as it. I just still have it from a year or two ago. It's been pretty much weeded out. There's so many things that are better than it now. But it's generally good to have a pretty good setup. If you notice, I have several different things for all of my, I have, different sets I can run for all of my different, just in case. You never know, you might get into a group where the other healer only has the same sets you're running. And because you can't stack majors and minors, well, what are you going to do? You're going to have to swap out to another set, get that SPC on, some other stuff. It's always better to be well equipped on a healer and a tank. Just so to help balance out the teams and stuff. Balancing them out is important. But like I was saying though, endgame, Yorvuld Symphony Sax Heal. Starting out, Spell Power Cure, really, really good. Really good. Worm Cult. Now the Worm Cult comes from the other DLC that came in the same update. They're both Imperial City DLC. White Gold Tower is the first, that's where Spell Power comes from. Now the other one is, let's go down to it, right there, Imperial City Prison. Now this one drops, whoops, that's not it. I thought that was where it dropped. Oop, I'm high. Worm Cult does not drop in there. It drops in base dungeon in, what's the name of it? Vaults of Madness, there it is. So you see right here, Worm's Raiment, there it is. Vaults of Madness. Now that's the base content. That is not a DLC, okay? So it's going to be a lot easier to get. You can always get that. Anybody can get Worm. It is not hard. Worm is a decent set to start out in. If you also have the DLC and you can get SPC, that's another good way to start. If you can't, Julianos and Worm works really well together, or you can just go out and get There's a few other things. I'm not really going to go into unless people have plus or other ways to get stats. But that pretty much goes over all the gear, the CP, all that stuff. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave comments on the video. I'll be happy to answer any questions you get. If you play the game or you're in a guild with me, feel free to hit me up in ESO. I play Xbox on North America server. You can always message me on Xbox or in the game. If I see it, I will always respond. I try to be as helpful as I can be. But that completes the video on the Necro Healer. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it helps you get better at the game.